Hello and welcome everyone to the National Veteran Small Business Coalition's virtual trainings. Today we welcome back PilieroMazza, Cy, Abby. It's great to see you. And this is series number 2 in our legal series here. And looks like we're going to be talking about diversifying your contract pipeline by maximizing opportunities through the DoD's Mentor-Protege program. I'm sure there's all kinds of new updates on the program that you'll be sharing with us today. And so I'm excited to learn about, how to diversify through leveraging the DoD Mentor-Protege program. So with that, I'm going to go into my normal stealth mode, and Question Fairy Maria will be popping in and out from time to time to ask questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks again for having us here. As Marie was saying, my name is Alba. I'm a partner with our government contracts group here at PilieroMazza, and I do a decent amount of our M&A corporate practices as well on top of that. So as this mentor-protege issue kind of crosses over both of them. And so it's always been an interesting topic. And in addition to that, with the current administration and a lot of the shifts in focus of priorities, DoD has been one of the areas where there's certainly opportunity there. And you teaming with larger companies and working together to really grow their portfolios while growing yours can be a really powerful tool. And that's what we're going to walk through here. And my colleague, Abby's going to take the lead on stuff. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cy. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Finan. I'm an associate here at PilieroMazza. I do mainly work within the government contracts practice group. So I take on a wide range of matters there through the acquisition life cycle. So whether that's bid protest, compliance work, pricing ethics, so deal with really any number of matters that come through the government contracts practice group.
Yeah, and so now as we kind of get moving, this is just a little bit about us and all of our different practice groups. We kind of have basically everything anyone would need, from a small business all the way to some of the larger companies that we work with. So happy to discuss anything. But with this, we'll start getting into the actual DoD mentor-proteges and some of the changes, some of the differences with the SBA program, why you might want to choose one over the other, or kind of working in both. And so with that, why don't you kind of start us off and take us through some of these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just go through a quick overview of the DoD Mentor-Protege program as a whole. It was first established in the early 90s. So this is actually earlier than the 8A and the all small SBA Mentor-Protege program, which is now combined into one as of November 2020. But the DoD's was really the first on the scene in the 1990s. It was first established as a pilot program and then was made permanent in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023. So the overarching information for the DoD Mentor-Protege program can be found in DFARS Appendix I. So all of the regulations there are available at DFARS Appendix I. So DFARS Appendix I-100 states that the purpose of the DoD Mentor-Protege program, it differs a little bit from the SBA's program, in that DoD's purpose is more so to increase the capability and participation of small businesses as both suppliers and subcontractors overall. And that's both, the purpose is actually within both the DoD sphere as well as the overarching federal government contracting sphere, but mainly there to increase the supplier base. And that's done through joint ventures, subcontracting, teaming agreements, and all the like. And so the purpose there for the mentors is to provide education and collaboration for the small business participants. All right, so now we'll get into specifics between the DoD and the SBA Mentor-Protege program. So specific differences here. The SBA program allows proteges to only have 2 mentors, whereas the DoD limits proteges to 1 mentor at a time. So that's a big difference there. The time period is also a big one as well. So the SBA mentor-protege agreements last for 6 years, whereas the DoD's can last for up to 5. Although generally the agreements are approved for 3-year term lengths, and then the mentor-proteges would need to provide some rationale as to why another 2 years is needed. Another key difference here is that in the SBA's program, the mentor can be small, whereas in DoD's, the mentor has to be large. In some later slides, we'll go over all of the specific requirements for a mentor in the DoD mentor-protege program, but a big one here, one of the key differences is that your business does have to be large in the DoD program. And then the last one here is that the SBA's mentor-protege program isn't agency specific. So if you're a participant within the SBA mentor-protege program, that's applicable to contracts for all agencies, whereas DoD's is specific to DoD. So then a big question here for a lot of companies is whether you're able to participate in both programs at the same time. The answer there is yes. But again, the requirements are different. They're run by different agencies. So you have to pay attention as you're applying. If you're already in the SBA program, keep in mind those key differences here. Another thing that we want to note is that if you're already a participant in the DoD mentor-protege program, SBA may deny your application if your mentor is in each, if the mentor is providing identical assistance. So in your application for the SBA, or to be an SBA mentor, you're going to have to provide some rationale as to why the assistance that you're providing as an SBA mentor differs from what you're already providing as a DoD mentor. So now that we've gone through the key differences between the SBA mentor-protege program and the DoD's program, let's start to go into why you should participate in the DoD mentor-protege program. So mentors within the DoD mentor-protege program can receive both cost reimbursement as well as credit towards small business contracting goals. And that's a big difference from the SBA's mentor-protege program, in that the DoD not only allows you to receive the credit towards small business contracting goals, but as a mentor, you can also get reimbursement for any of the costs that you've spent in mentoring your protege. And then as a protege, you're able to receive guidance from, in DoD's case, large businesses, so top performing prime contractors, either in an industry that you're trying to break into or in an industry where you're trying to grow. So you're able to receive new market opportunities there. And then just another small thing to note, as a mentor, if you're hoping to receive cost reimbursement, the specific process to do so, it can be done either as a standalone contract, or you can modify an existing contract to add a cost reimbursable claim for those developmental assistance mentoring costs.
And that's really the main difference, or the main reason, I should say, why mentors really prefer the DoD program. From the protege's perspective, it's just good to note as well that there are some limitations. So as Abby was saying, it's DoD specific. And if you are protested or challenged for any procurement, it goes to SBA. So how SBA is reviewing affiliation and control issues, all those kind of case law and everything is still going to govern, even if you're in the DoD program. And also there's some outstanding questions about how SBA will treat certain things if you have multiple mentors under DoD. Will they begin to look at that as a potential negative down the road, or say that should count against your total count for SBA? There's been some talk about that. In addition, the idea of joint venturing, which is also very powerful and very common in a way that mentors and proteges interact and form joint ventures under the SBA's program. SBA's view of that under DoD is that it's also not something that is directly allowable, or you don't have that automatic affiliation protection. And because SBA is the one ultimately reviewing that and ultimately going to rule on whether you're affiliated, it's also important to note that as well. Zero risk, even when you're working in a DoD procurement. So just keep that in mind, that these are some major differences between programs.
So hi Abby, can you go back one slide? I have a couple questions. Is the relationship with the mentor, the large prime, and the small business, the protege, contract based? And is it that the prime is providing kind of like their expertise in the world of the DoD sector? And does the other question, the other piece of this is, does the large prime normally approach a small business, or is it that the small business needs to find the large business and then collectively they go to apply for the DoD mentor protege? Maybe you're going to get into that in the slides ahead, but my mind is kind of already how do I find my mentor, or does my mentor find me? Am I guaranteed a contract, or is it that this company, the large prime, is just going to go ahead and provide me guidance in the DoD sector? So those are some questions that I have.
Yeah, I think those are great questions, and I know we go over in some later slides how to find either a mentor. Sai, you could probably speak more to this, but I think generally it's the proteges finding the mentor, because there's just more. There's a little more, not necessarily to gain as a protege, but there's going to be more proteges that are seeking a mentor than a mentor that's necessarily seeking a protege in this program.
Yeah, and it is more formal with DoD, that sort of process and steps, which again, I think what we're going to get into. Okay. But in addition to that, as far as do you have a contract, I think what Abby was talking about is the funding mechanism. So not all DoD mentor proteges are funded. In fact, there was a moratorium for many years where there was no money allocated to it, and the program somewhat dried up because that was really the main driver of using DoD versus just some other one. Okay. And the funding isn't unlimited. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, there tends to be a push to get some of the funding mentor protege agreements put in place, and that kind of runs out, kind of almost like visas. And then at that point, you'll have the approved agreement, and that agreement underpins everything. But the funding piece of it is where Abby was saying it could be attached to a current contract through a cost reimbursable CLIN or something of that nature. Whereas it's not part of the mentor protege agreement that you have in place that is that is put together. It's separate. But just remembering there's these different pieces of it. And if you don't have a funded mentor-protege agreement, then that whole concept of getting paid, the mentor getting paid, just doesn't even exist. They just take small business credit towards their goals.
Awesome. Cool. All right. I'll wait for the other pearls in the upcoming slides. Okay.
Thanks, Marie. All right. So now that we have discussed why you would want to participate as a mentor, we'll go into the specifics of who can actually participate as a mentor. So we discussed on an earlier slide that one of the requirements in the DoD's program that differs from SBA is that the mentor has to be other than a small business concern. So there are limited exceptions there, but generally the business needs to be large. So we'll just go through the list here. As an overarching requirement, the mentor has to be eligible for federal contract awards. So coming under that means that the mentor can't have been or can't currently be debarred or suspended. Mentor needs to have good financial health and character, and then generally has to be qualified to assist and contribute to the Mentor-Protege program goals. So that's less gets to the company, the mentor as a whole, and more just like a statement as to how they can actually help a protege accomplish the protege's goals. So it's a little bit more of a gray area there than a hard requirement necessarily. And we'll go over the requirements of a mentor-protege agreement and what you have to submit and how you would meet that requirement of quote unquote being qualified to assist and contribute. So then some more hard requirements there is that the mentor has to have received DoD contracts and subcontracts totaling $25 million or more during the prior fiscal year. So that's a big one there. Even if you're a large business, you may not have a revenue stream as large as that. So that can be prohibitive for some that are trying to participate as a mentor. Another one there is that you have to be an active DoD prime contractor with a subcontracting plan. And then in submitting a mentor application, that has to be approved by the director of the Office of Small Business Programs at DoD.
And that's why, too, you do that first. And then the mentor is sort of allowed to be there, and they can be in like a pool of mentors. And so usually the mentor takes the lead, as we were saying earlier, in this entire process.
Yeah, but there is a scenario in which somebody who's qualified to be a mentor may not have applied to be a mentor yet, that as somebody who is looking to be a protege might be able to find a diamond in the rough in a way. And we'll go over that a little bit later, how as a protege you can some nuggets there to look for qualified mentors that others may not know about yet. Okay, so specifically how to apply as a mentor. So a statement that you're currently performing under at least one approved subcontracting plan as negotiated with DoD, and you're eligible for federal contract awards. Just an overarching summary about your company, a description of your ability to provide developmental assistance. So that's just a general how you can contribute to the Mentor-Protege program as a whole, and how it increases the overarching Mentor-Protege program goals, which is to increase subcontracting opportunities for small businesses in your vendor base. A statement that, or essentially just the total amount of contracts and subcontracts received for the prior 2 fiscal years. So that's going to support whether your company has over 25 million in the prior fiscal year. And then the total dollars and percentage of subcontracts awarded in the prior 2 fiscal years. So 2 separate statements there, the amount received and then the amount also awarded. And then under the amount awarded, the total dollar and percentage of awards that are made to small disadvantaged businesses. And generally, once you submit this application, the turnaround time is pretty quick for approval. So 10 business days, but around 1 week is average there. And all of this information can be found in DFAR's Appendix I 105. All right, so we've been focusing on the mentor side of things. We'll go into who can participate as a protege. So again, the difference here from the SBA Mentor-Protege program is that you can qualify as a protege under a NAICS code, which is not your primary in an SBA Mentor-Protege agreement. But here, to qualify as a protege, you have to have less than half the size standard of your primary NAICS code. So as a protege, you also can't be owned or managed by individuals or entities with stock options or convertible securities in the mentor. And then you have to be at least one of the following. So these are going to be just the general small disadvantaged business socioeconomic categories. So owned and controlled by an Indian tribe or a Native Hawaiian organization. So a disabled individual, so a service disabled veteran-owned concern, woman-owned, qualified help zone. So again, those are going to be all of those socioeconomic categories that are common as found in SBA's Code of Federal Regulations.
And when you're looking at half the size standard, idea, they don't exactly follow SBA, or they don't do like formal size determinations, but just be aware that just because you're meeting these requirements or DoD doesn't find something or you report your revenue, that doesn't necessarily mean you're safe. So if someone were to challenge you, it goes to SBA. Any size challenge on any procurement, including DoD, will go to SBA, and SBA will apply all of its case law about affiliation and control and aggregation of revenues or aggregation of employees. So all of that will still come into play. So just be aware.
Yeah, thanks, Si. All right. We'll get to Marie's question here. So now that we've gone over how to be a mentor and the requirements, and the requirements to participate as a protege, where do you actually find a mentor? So some common questions to ask: what businesses are you currently doing business with? So do you have any active subcontracts that would make sense to participate in the DoD's program with them as a mentor? What relationships do you already have? Looking at the DoD subcontracting directory, what businesses there align with either a space that you're already participating in, or if you're looking to expand to different areas, different contracting areas, what large businesses exist there that have prime contracts already with DoD. As Si said earlier, DoD publishes a Mentor-Protege program approved mentor list. So these are mentors that have already that have already submitted an application and are approved to be a mentor that may or may not already have a protege, but are available to reach out to. They're able to take on another there. And then research your business of interest. So what field or like what space specifically are you looking to go into? What mentors either that are already approved or maybe some businesses that qualify to be a mentor have prime contracts with the government that would be helpful for you to get in as a protege. So.
And like with any mentor-protege research, if you have a mentor and you have some potential targets, looking up their contract backlog, seeing when their contracts are going to expire. Do they have any small business contracts that are expiring? Maybe they have now grown because obviously they have to be large in order to qualify, but they might have legacy small business work or 8A or woman owner, service able vet, or whatever you happen to be. And so pitching the idea of you taking on the follow-on work and them working under you is a good pitch to you. So do that research as well.
So, Sai, to piggyback off of what you were just saying, it would also be important for the protege to kind of think about the type of markets they want to go into, and then hone in on perhaps the large primes that have specialties in those areas. I'm thinking, especially with the new administration's focus on shipbuilding, Space Force, the Golden Dome, we've heard about all of those things in the news, and then see if they're reflected on this pre-approved list that DoD has, and then perhaps do a reach out to those large primes to see if there would be interest. Would that be another strategy perhaps for them to take?
Yeah, I mean, if there's large programs that were kind of up for recompete or up for competition is probably best because they're still getting their teams together. If it's something where someone's already been awarded work and they have work, it can't hurt to try to see if you can get on the team, but it's most likely that all the spots and everything has already been put together. If you hear, though, of a large prime that might be losing a subcontractor, or there was some recertification event, which technically doesn't apply to their subs, but they can force them, that maybe they're having issues with their goaling, that could be another place to jump in, or some really specific expertise that you have as well.
Okay, cool. All right. Professional associations probably too. If I'm in architectural and engineering, I may want to go to some professional associations to meet the large primes. Cool. All right. Okay. See you guys in a bit.
Yeah, I think although it requires a bit more legwork, a good way to figure out a lot of the information that Sai was discussing is attending groups that you're a part of, attending those networking events to foster relationships, conferences within the space that you're looking to participate is always helpful.
Sure.
Okay, so what's required once you've actually found, like a mentor's found a protege or a protege's found a mentor, it's different from the application to be a mentor, but this is once you've already created that relationship, what's required to be submitted in the proposal package. So an executive summary, that's going to be the goals of the relationship in general, the mentor-protege agreement that's found at DFAR's Appendix I-106, benefits and return on investment statement, and then the technical and cost proposals. So it's going to be everything that's listed under there, but technical cost summaries, like milestone charts, what you're looking to accomplish, certain technology transfers, business development goals, the labor hours and salaries, and then manufacturing and non-manufacturing agreements. And again, this can all be found at DFARS Appendix I-106. All right, so now we're going to go into the specifics of something that we discussed earlier, the difference between the DoD Mentor-Protege program versus SBA, what the mentor is looking to receive here. If this is going to be a direct reimbursed agreement, the mentor receives reimbursement for allowable costs. So that's going to be any of the developmental assistance that's provided to the protege. And these costs start on the day that the funds are obligated. So that agreement is going to be submitted to the DoD Office of Small Business Program for their approval. And I was discussing this earlier about the funds being obligated at the beginning of the fiscal year there. So if a mentor is looking for a direct reimbursable agreement, generally better to get that executed earlier rather than later in the fiscal year because they're not unlimited funds there. The credit agreement, the fiscal year doesn't matter as much there, or doesn't really matter at all because there aren't any funds obligated for this one. So the mentor receives credit for or toward their small disadvantaged business subcontracting goal. So this is going to be the same as the SBA's program. It's going to be based on developmental assistance that's provided to the protege, and the credit starts on the day that the credit's approved by DoD. And that agreement is submitted to a different office. It's submitted to DoD's DCMA. Then there's also the availability for a hybrid option there.
In the credit agreement, usually you only get credit towards your goals if you're subcontracting. So this is sort of a way to layer on top of that. So it's not just the direct work that the protege is doing for you as a subcontractor. It's all the funds that you're expending on them. So it's not that it's nothing. Remember that. A lot of primes just want to talk about direct reimbursement. If they don't get it, they just move on. But there can be benefits, especially for companies that have robust small business plans and even commercial plans, because then they can count all those dollars that they spend on you to meet all of their goaling. It makes it a lot easier for them. So you could pitch that as well.
That's a good point. All right, so specific elements of a mentor-protege agreement, all of the things that you have to include in the agreement. Things like your NAICS code, a statement certifying that the protege doesn't exceed the NAICS code size standard, name, address, email, address, phone number for both mentor and protege, POC there, as well as a signature of both parties. Any compliance statements, assessment of the developmental needs of the protege developmental program, the assistance, a statement of the assistance that the mentor is going to provide the protege, specifically in understanding federal contracting regulations. So that goes to the purpose of the mentor-protege program as a whole, as well as an estimation of dollar value, types of subcontracts, and timeline of awards to the protege from the mentor. The agreement also has to include any termination procedures as well as the term of the program participation. So like we discussed earlier, generally that's going to be 3 years, but sometimes DoD will approve for up to 5. And all of this can be found in DFARS Appendix I-107. So that appendix lists all of the elements here. What compliance statements are required in a mentor-protege agreement? So it's going to be a statement that both the mentor and protege are eligible to participate in the program. That gets back to the requirements of both the mentor and protege in participating, and kind of the size and total contract value amounts that you have to have as a mentor. A certification statement that the mentor doesn't share ownership or management of the protege. So that can be both directly or indirectly. that the mentor doesn't have an agreement in place to merge with the protege, and that the mentor's owners or managers are not related, familially related to owner or manager of the protege. And those familial relationships are a bit broader than the SBA regulations, I think, generally.
Yeah, because they're older. The SBA used to have it broader, and then they narrowed it down because SBA changes their regs frequently, whereas DoD takes a while. So it is important to make sure you're looking at the time, because these could change, or SBA could change. And again, all the affiliation issues still exist and can still cause you certain issues. And the SBA's program, for instance, one of the benefits is that the protege can sell in order to raise capital up to 40% of their company to the mentor, and that relationship is excluded from a finding of affiliation. So you can't use 40% ownership against the mentor or against the protege if you're looking to find affiliation. Whereas that sort of relationship could make it more difficult or impossible for you to join in the DoD program. So there are some like gating areas where you might have to pick one over the other, and it's not as clean as saying, well, you can just, as long as you're meeting the rules of both and the goals of both, you're fine. Because there are some like this where if you have ownership, you can be excluded from the DoD program.
Yeah, and that's a good note. When you're looking at general affiliation, the SBA's regulations are informative, but there are more specific requirements for DoD. So compliance statements, some more compliance statements that are required. So the mentor has to certify that within the past 2 years of submitting the agreement that they haven't been employed as an officer, director, principal stockholder, managing member, or just overarching key employee of the protege. The mentor also has to certify that within the past 2 years that they have not engaged in a joint venture with the protege, unless specifically approved by SBA. So the mentor also has to certify that they're not the primary party that's providing contracts to the protege, whether that's indirectly or directly. And that's going to be measured by the dollar value of the contracts. The mentor and protege also have to certify that SBA has not made a determination of affiliation or control of the mentor over the protege, and that the proteges will commit to comply with the reporting requirements during the whole duration of the agreement.
And these are more strict. So the first bullet here, I think, is more strict than the SBA's newly organized concern rule, which is a little bit more fluffy, and it would not necessarily cause affiliation, but it could cause you to be excluded for purposes of this program. Also, the JV issue is interesting because, again, this goes to the old rules. DoD, again, doesn't change their rules. And so SBA has changed their rules. So they don't even approve joint venture agreements anymore. Even for 8A competitive awards, they don't approve joint ventures. In 8A sole source, they really don't approve them either. They just send you a questionnaire. So there's a question here as to whether or not the DoD is going to continue to apply this, or whether they need to go through the entire rulemaking process to eliminate this, because arguably it's a policy that they could override, but it's not something SBA even does anymore, so it's outdated. And then the other idea about the primary party, the SBA's rule has a 70% threshold, where this doesn't really have a threshold. So arguably you could be fine under the SBA's rule of financial economic dependence versus this rule. So even if you're fine under one, you might not be fine under the other. So again, just examples of there are differences here you need to pay attention to that could cause problems with compliance.
Thanks, Sai. Now we're going to go into the developmental programs for a protege and a mentor-protege agreement. So the protege is going to provide information as to the type of assistance that will be provided to the protege. So the assistance from the mentor must increase the protege's ability to participate in federal contracts and subcontracts. And the mentor, the goal of the mentor to the protege will be to increase small business subcontracting opportunities in industries where small businesses aren't dominant in the vendor base. So again, this goes to the overarching goals of the DoD's Mentor-Protege program as a whole, which is going to be increasing the supplier base and subcontracting opportunities for small business. So the factors to assess a protege's developmental progress are going to be measured by specific milestones for the type of assistance that the mentor is providing. Then there also needs to be a quantitative and qualitative benefit to DoD. So the protege will provide essentially a statement that lays out the benefits that DoD is going to experience through this this agreement between the mentor and the protege, as well as protege's goals for awards that the protege can compete for outside of the mentor-protege program as a whole. So just again, DoD's goal here is just increasing the industrial base as a whole. So all of these statements here get to that. So the agreement also has to include information on how a mentor and protege, how they're going to terminate the mentor-protege agreement. So some general requirements here is that the mentor must provide the protege with written notice of a proposed termination. So that has to include specific reasons for the termination. The notice has to be provided to the protege within 30 days of the proposed termination. The protege must then have 30 days to respond, and they can rebut the findings of the mentor and offer a remedial program in this response. Once the protege responds, the mentor has to either withdraw the termination notice, continue participation, or issue a formal notice of termination. And this formal notice of termination has to include the decision regarding whether the mentor is terminating for cause. And this actual notice of termination is final and isn't actually reviewable by DoD. So the termination provisions within the mentor-protege agreement has to include these baseline requirements. The protege then is also able to terminate. They must also provide the mentor written notice within 30 days of their proposed voluntary termination. But then it doesn't go through this whole response process as is required when the mentor is terminating the program. So the termination notices have to be sent to the agency approving the agreement. So that's going to be the specific DoD agency, as well as DCMA conducting the annual review. And then for any reimbursable agreements, the copies must also be sent to the program manager and the contracting officer in order to terminate. So some compliance considerations when developing an MPA. These are some things that we may have already hit on, but we just want to highlight again for you. So mentors can have several proteges, but proteges can only have one mentor at a time. Generally, the mentor-protege agreements aren't going to be approved for over 3 years. However, sometimes an extra 2 years can be approved with certain circumstances that you can prove as to why those extra 2 years are necessary or helpful to DoD. Mentor-protege agreements can't be longer than the protege's small business certification period. So those timelines and time periods have to align. So again, that period of performance for the agreement can't exceed 3 years unless extraordinary circumstances apply and may allow for extension, but 5 years is the hard cutoff there. A new mentor application is going to be required if your company changes its name, and all of the compliance statements that we discussed during this presentation are going to be subject to the False Claims Act.
Yeah, really, any statement you ever make to the government is generally always done. So that kind of,
yeah,
it goes without saying.
So how do you actually submit a mentor-protege agreement proposal? As we discussed earlier, generally, or really ever, you're not going to submit a proposal without having formally or informally made introductions between, mentor, protege, as well as agency. So you're going to, as a protege, develop relationships to find a mentor. The mentor then likely make introductions with the agency itself, and then comes the formal submission of your mentor-protege agreement proposal. So for those credit agreements, that application has to go to DCMA, but then for direct, reimbursed, or hybrid agreements, you're going to submit those applications to DoD's Office of Small Business Participation. So again, that's going to include the overall agreement application, an endorsement letter from the program manager. So that's why those informal applications or informal introductory meetings are helpful, because the program manager is going to submit an endorsement letter to the Office of Small Business Participation. Office of Small Business Participation will then also execute an endorsement letter, and then a funding request from the Office of Small Business Participation as well. So the reporting requirements are going to be submitted on ESRS, and that's going to be found on the standard form 294. So looking at the specific differences between the reports for mentors versus proteges, mentor reports are required on a semi-annual basis. So they're due 30 days before the end of the reporting period, which ends on March 31st and then September 30th. And then the performance data that's required is going to be in this list here. So it's going to be, any dollars credited, expenditures, dollars obligated, new awards, loans, assistance obtained by the mentor, any changes to the mentor-protege agreement, really any information that would be relevant for the agency to know as relevant to your agreement. So the protege annual reports, again, are a little different. They're only required once, and those need to be submitted by October 31st. Those reports require a little less information. Generally, it's the mentors that are submitting the meat of the information there, but the protege is going to detail any progress that's been made in the past year. So whether that's different employment opportunities, revenue, increased revenue, or participation in DoD contracts. It's also important to note here that the protege's annual report can also be submitted as one with the mentor's report for the September 30th period. So those can be submitted together. For DCMA performance reviews, DCMA is going to look at in annual performance reviews, they're going to be looking at these mentor-protege agreement reports. They're going to verify the data on the semi-annual report, and they're going to review any progress and accomplishments of the mentor-protege agreement in general as compared to the goals and timelines that were laid out in the original agreement. So in the DCMA performance review, DCMA is also going to look into whether all costs reimbursed to the mentor were reasonably incurred. So in the same way that they conduct any other sort of audit, they're going to look at those costs that the mentor claimed as helping the protege or as assisting the protege, whether those are reasonable, and then whether the mentor and protege accurately reported their progress. All right. All right. Do you have any last questions for us?
I think, with the reporting requirements, I don't know if it's a question as much as a call out. If I were a mentor or if I were a protege, I'd make sure that I had some kind of, I'll just say, a database or some type of mechanism to go ahead and capture all of the required reporting call outs that I need to do to DCMA or SBA or any of the key players, with the programs, so that I'm not doing one of those squirrel things, right? And looking for it, I think I have it here and kind of where did I put this information but just to really make sure that I had all of the reportable deliverables in one location to provide to both my mentor and or any of the agencies that may do an audit on my involvement within the program. So that's just something.
Especially the cost, because it's all cost reimbursable. And it's really, the audit is no different than a cost reimbursable audit. So you could end up getting, especially if you spend a lot. So some of the large mentors might be spending a significant amount, and that's going to get looked at much more carefully. And if you need to have cost accounting systems set up to establish the fairness and reasonableness and bidding, all the stuff you usually would do.
So it's really a program to be quite serious about. It isn't, I'll say, and I'm not negating any other agency's programs, but this is a very thought-provoking, and I'm going to say a strategic process for both the mentor and the protege when they enter into a DoD, the Mentor-Protege program, to really think about it from a strategy standpoint, and how to, is it going to be a benefit to leverage them within that particular ecosystem? And maybe that's kind of an open door for you all to kind of, hey, there's this DOE Mentor-Protege program, and can we do a deep dive in the SBA all small? So maybe there's a few more virtual trainings on the horizon, Cy and Abby, on those programs as well. So I'll toss that into the universe.
Oh, yeah. And the SBA is the most popular. It's also fully statutory. And if you follow that, it actually, you're safe from an affiliation perspective as well. So it is, thinking about which one is best for your company. The SBA is broader, but if you're really going for DoD and you want an in with specific DoD activities, this program can really help you, especially in the current environment. So
cool. Good. Well, with that, I think I'm going to call this one a wrap. And I know we have at least one more, and I think I've tossed a couple other ideas out into your pond over there for you all to consider as well. So with that, everyone, I'm going to call this session a wrap, and we look forward to seeing you in future NVSBC virtual trainings. Bye-bye.